Thank you. We're going to be calling this meeting to order on September 26, 2023. Madam Clerk. Yeah, actually 6:30.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting now open at 6:30 p.m. moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Any opening remarks from members of council? See, go ahead, Councillor Bajelli.
Just want to take this opportunity to remind the public of the grand opening of the Moose Creek Community Hall this coming Saturday. Looks like a great agenda, full day of free events. So if anyone has the opportunity to come on into Moose Creek, check out the new hall from 1 o'clock right through until the wee hours until Nancy shuts us all down. So
Yes.
I'll be in bed by that.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
There's also another good event that's coming up. 100 Women Who Care is back after a bit of a hiatus due to COVID, and it's coming up on the, sorry, help me out again.
Next Thursday,
Next-
October 5th.
Thank you. Yeah, so some of us will be helping out, checking people in and stuff, and hopefully lots of ladies will attend. I understand there's 4 really good potential candidates vying for receiving the money that can be applied. So anybody who can attend, please do.
Thank you. Moving on, the adoption of the agenda.
Be it resolved that the agenda be approved as presented, moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any discussions on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or nature thereof? Seeing none, moving on to our delegation. So we have, I'm trying to think of inspector, and how would we, Jonathan would be constable? So Jonathan Bray and Mark Hemrick, thank you very much for attending, and you guys can take the floor and give us your report.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Evening, everybody. I'm here to provide the stats for a bigger part of the summer from March to August of this year compared to last year. As you can see on the under our record management system database from violent crimes, we've got a few zeros there, which is what we want to see, especially in the top 3 categories. We see a hike in sexual assault calls for service. We don't have a direct answer for that. It's province-wide. It's nothing to do with North Stormont compared to South Glengarry. It's a province-wide issue. What we're going to be doing is creating awareness for people, especially the youth and high schools and above, about the do's and don'ts of that area. But we don't have an answer for the hike in that. Like I said, it's only 9 to 17 calls, about 8 calls for more calls for service. We do have an excellent crime unit in the STNG that takes care of STNG as a whole. But we don't really have an answer to explain that hike of 88%. When it comes to the assaults, they're down 10% in that same sector, but they're basically the same as last year. And before I go any further, I'll explain to you that obviously we're still dealing with post-pandemic issues in the society. People are starting to conduct themselves in pre-pandemic behavior. We seem to be a fluctuation of calls here for service. You'll see below that as well. So we're not blaming the pandemic, but it's also creating a society where things are kind of unbalanced for a little bit. It's only year 1, right? Year 1.5 since things have opened up. Come down to property crime, the arson. We had no calls for service this year for arson. That could be due to the fact that people have been charged, or that it's just that suspect could have fallen off the mat due to maybe it had a mental health behavior that was assessed and taken care of, or the person was charged. So we don't have that details for you, but that's why it could be a factor why it's down. The brick and entering and the theft over, they're up quite significantly. I'm sure you've all heard of the auto theft that's been happening throughout the Canada, not just North Stormont, not just Ontario. Obviously that's going to be a reason. I'm sure you all know someone who knows someone that had their car stolen, myself included, and have friends of mine that certain brands come up to mind. And that's where I'm going to request or recommend that people have, if you have a garage, use a garage. If you've got a club, buy a club. I bought a club, $60. It was the best purchase I've made. I'm not saying it's the ultimate tool, but it's also a deterrent, right? So we do have more, I believe we have more people on the road working as well this year, which would link to mischief calls at nighttime. We also have a great auxiliary program that do nighttime patrols on evenings and sometimes weekends. They patrol especially in town, right? The old schools or the basketball courts, the hockey arenas, that kind of things, where they will sit somewhere in the dark and wait for something to happen or at least report it. But also having a cruiser in town at 2 a.m. does deter any mild, any use or anybody that's not supposed to be in a certain area to cause damage to any property. Going to the drug crime section. We've all had 2 trafficking calls or occurrences last year, and that's thanks to their excellent community street crime unit we have in town. Those are detective constables who take care of the drug activity as well as street crime. So it's not just a drugs, it's street crime with stolen cars, rick-and-enters, anything that requires our attention, not just during work hours. Also, I forgot to mention the frauds, which was on the top bracket there. They are down 24%. A lot of that has to do with awareness, especially to our seniors. I know a few people who have made little kind of presentations to senior homes about answering phone calls, people they don't know, or answering phone calls to people who think they know, but they don't. Like, hey, grandma, it's John. Like, and who is it? Or they'll ask for we recommend ask for the last name or their birthday, or they kind of play with the words, especially the elder. But however, people of all ages have been affected, right? And we have created awareness, which is why they're down 24% compared to last year. And that's pretty much it for the stats. I do have other information that I can provide you. Everything else here with the data, they're down 11% for violent crimes. Property crimes are down 0.4%. And then again, in the bottom, there's a criminal record checks, which are up, which means that people are back out and looking for employment. They're looking for volunteer work, they're employing. And that's what I have for that information. I've heard good things about policing activity at the Avamore Fair. We were there this year. I don't believe we were at the Moose Creek baseball tournament last weekend, but I plan to be at the opening of the Moose Creek Rec Center, which is Sunday, I believe. Or Saturday, Saturday, I'm sorry, yes, okay. We do have also excellent traffic officers that deal with the enforcement on the highways, and they're very aware of the school bus activity that's new to, just to remind the public to slow down when the buses are around, especially not just speeding just in the highway, the school zone. And no one needs to be reminded of how, the buses also go slow, they stop at the train tracks, they look for ways it stops. Another thing also which is coming up with Northland over here tonight is the farm activity. All the harvest season is up. You're going to be seeing a lot of combines on the road, wider than you would like to be, but however, they need to get A to B and just give them space, especially at nighttime. I know they have their four-ways on, but you can't really tell what they are until you're right on top of them. So that's something that public should be aware of, especially in their area, because it's all farming and agriculture, right? So, and that's pretty much all the information I have. The one more thing is that you may or may not see extra police activity in certain towns. If we're looking, because I'm part of a training unit that we train once a week, we try and look for vacant buildings to train in. So if you happen to see any police, like 5-6 cruisers parked in a corner and you see a sign saying police training, don't be alarmed. It's just police team doing certain training on a certain building. We've managed to use the Oberg School 3 times this year. Very thankful for that. We've also done in a few gravel pits in the area, which I'm not going to mention, but so we're if you see us in the area, don't be alarmed. If it's police training, it's just, we're not using anything lethal. It's just to keep our minds fresh. So
Before I move on to council, so the report, I missed the headline, those numbers, is that for the SDNG detachment, or is that just North Stormont? numbers?
this is strictly Northstone. Yeah. And from March to August of this year compared to March of August last year. So it's bigger than a quarter, but it gives you a bigger spectrum, broader information.
Okay, any questions from members of council? Yeah, you good? Or-
It's not working. Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. Just thank you for what you're doing. I think all in all, it seems like a good trend in most areas. A little concerning about the sexual assaults. Theft over, increasing from theft under, that just might be inflation. But anyhow, no, thank you. It's funny because I drove by the Berwick School and I saw a whole bunch of, I go, what's going on here? We just bought this building. I saw your sign up saying that you were just training. So I'm glad it's being used even before we're ready to move in. But thank you for the report and thank you for what you do. Appreciate it.
It's
Councillor McDonald?
only because I just saw it through some community members in Chrysler, but there's definitely people with a lot more cameras now. Everyone's got these Nest cams and cameras all over their houses, and people are posting a lot of pictures of, oh, these guys were walking through my backyard last night, and and then everyone starts putting the cameras and they start asking what they can do. And of course, I would be very disturbed if I looked in my backyard at 2 a.m. and there's people walking through my backyard. And you mentioned that you do have cruisers that will come sometimes and sit in different places. Are you still looking for feedback from the community if like people feel like maybe there's something going on, you come and park in Chrysler, or how do you, I guess, decide where you're gonna set up your nighttime surveillance?
No, that's a good question. And a lot of reactions or a lot of work is reaction, right? So if we don't have any complaints, we can't know where the complaints are coming from. We encourage complaints about certain trespass activity, speeding motor vehicles, people breaking the law, right? So, but we do have proactive officers. We have a lot of them. And every officer I know is a proactive officer. However, can't cover the whole county at once. We focus on what we know by data. And if there's no data for a certain area, I'm not saying they're not going to focus there, but they may not sit there as long as it would be if hypothetically, let's say the Berwick Township building needs attention because there's graffiti in the walls every day. Well, then we sit here for longer. We try and pinpoint who's doing it at a certain time of day. But complaints are encouraged, or not complaints, but concerns about people walking through the yard. And everyone has a camera now. And most cameras I know do have a sensor light. So that it would deter someone. However, it's at that point it's too late. We do have information on certain vehicles coming in, and if we happen to have a license plate, we act on that. We make do or no knock. What are you doing here? Or can I help you with anything?
On specifics, like there was another small theft in Finch at South Nation. There was a bunch of graffiti at Warwick, like an excessive amount, which I reported to Pierre as well. But then there was like multiple reports of these similar guys kind of walking through different yards on different nights in Chrysler. So you start to hear it from different places and you start to feel like maybe there's either someone in town who's on a bad streak or whatever's going on. So there have been a few things going on that I've heard from Finch, Berwick, and Chrysler. So maybe I could send in like something to you or encourage other people to phone in and let you know so that you guys can be more present, because I think they cleaned up the graffiti. The graffiti's back again, went back and re-tagged the entire boardwalk and all these different signs. So it seems like, yeah, something's up. Like these people were carrying golf clubs as they were walking through the backyards, right? Like it's not just like kids are like cutting through. It sort of seems a little more sinister, I guess. I'm saying it, but also I can ask people to send it in to you directly.
No, and I totally agree. When it comes to specific locations, I know as well that I have received calls from township and counties regarding stop signs being taken, and then the part went up, and the next day it's up again. So we've had incidents where we've caught them in the act, but incident where we've happened to find out that someone's hoarding 5 stop signs, for example, right? We've done that. When it comes to nighttime and trespassing, we are out there, we're patrolling as much as we can. And we do have other units working behind the scenes and creating information, gathering information, passing it on to the road units. The road officers are based on, they'll take the call, and whatever they can forward to everybody else in platoon, they forward it, whether it's from Dundas or Glengarry or South Stormont, North Stormont. And then everybody else gets the email and they act on that. We're doing calls for service is when they try to do this patrolling. Calls for service usually take precedent depending on what the situation is. However, like I said, I'm from North Stormont. I love the North Stormont area. I'm here as much as I can. County 15 and 12 are main arteries, and we travel a lot. But yes, there is unfortunately sometimes where we're not always in the right place at the right time, and that's when we encourage the calls to come in. If it's a big concern, just let us know, and we'll have a proper officer deal with it.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions from that side? See none, maybe we'll get Inspector Hemrick to come and say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, mayors of or members of council, staff, and members of the community that have joined us this evening. First and foremost, this will be my 3rd time appearing before council. It actually dawned on me about 2 weeks ago when I appeared before my first council of my fall roundtables in South Dundas. I cannot believe how much the time has flown. And the saying often goes, time flies when you're having fun. And certainly I wanted to start every single sort of update to every municipal council that I appeared before with a very big thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Deputy Mayor, councillors, to the staff, but most importantly to the communities. We are extremely fortunate to work for the Ontario Provincial Police, but probably even more fortunate to patrol the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. We often take for granted the support that we receive from our local politicians, our local staff, but more importantly, the members of the community. It is a pleasure to police in this community. It is actually a privilege and an honor to police in this community. And I know that as the detachment commander, all of my members at the detachment feel the exact same way. We are extremely lucky. So I would just like to begin by providing that thanks. Certainly, Mr. Mayor, you and Mr. Deputy Mayor, as being part of County Council, you see most of my reports that are filtered down through the Police Services Board. But as I mentioned last year, I do like to provide a yearly wrap up to every municipal council, appear before council, and allow councillors to ask me some questions and potentially address some local issues. As Councillor McDonald has just brought up, I do have a couple of extras that I can touch on as well. So if I forget to touch on those, please remind me, or please re-ask a similar question you asked Constable Bray. Did an excellent job, but I've got a little bit more information. Certainly, I want to bring you back to about last year this time. I'm sure as council is aware, one of the main issues that we have and one of the main priorities for the detachment remains traffic safety, whether it be on our roadways, whether it be on our highways. But certainly last fall, I identified another area where we really needed to put some concrete efforts, and that was on our trail systems. Certainly our ATV trail systems and our MSV trail systems required a significant investment in our time and our proactive patrols. I'm very happy to report that we spent a significant amount of time out on the trails during the fall and winter. Constable Bray being one of our operators, and that we are going on our 4th straight year without a serious PI or fatality on any of our trail systems. The feedback that we have received from the public about those interactions out on the trails was tremendous. They were happy to see us out there. They were happy to see the engagement and the education that we provided to the public. So very positive, and that included some activities up in North Stormont, directly in the township. Certainly, Constable Bray did touch on the auxiliary unit. And in one of my reports back to the Police Services Board, one of my highlighted portions was to really touch on the incredible work that our auxiliary unit has been doing. And I certainly want to make you aware of that. One of the activities that they do participate in are proactive patrols, because our officers seem to be engaged in more and more reactive activities. We need to find new and innovative ways to make sure that we are providing those proactive patrols. And Councillor, to answer one of your questions, yes, if those a summary of those complaints do come in with those areas, uniform patrol is not available, we can ask the auxiliary unit to act as our eyes and ears and really show that flag and fly that color. And they, in combination with the uniform patrol, can really set some solid things up. So that might be a way to address one of those issues and ensure that we are showing a strong presence within the community. I can tell you that our auxiliary unit and every auxiliary unit across the province has been severely depleted. And again, that is a result of COVID, when those men and women were stood down for nearly 2 years. That really hurt our retention of those volunteers within those programs. I'm fortunate to say that in SDNG, we still have a very strong and resilient program. And they do a tremendous amount for all of our communities. As I mentioned, they do the proactive patrol, but probably their most important activity that they do is engage in community events. So, for example, they one of their primary roles over the past year is they've been engaging a lot with the Cornwall Community Police Service Auxiliary Unit, who is also down. And we have been combining our efforts to attend local food drives to support the local food banks, not only in the city of Cornwall, but throughout the United Counties. Because I'm sure, as council is well aware, food insecurity, rising inflation has made food a big priority, and it's a basic need. So it's something that we really wanted to focus our efforts on. They are also available for any type of community events we ask them to go to, whether that be to provide traffic support, information and education, or in a recruiting capacity. Had I been a little bit more aware about the opening of the new Moose Creek Recreation Center over the course of the weekend, I would have certainly engaged them to attend and be part of our presence. But as Constable Bray and I were just talking before the meeting, I will have an opportunity myself to stop by as I'm heading down the 138 to some other community events. Certainly the 138 continues as it travels directly through now Stormont, continues to be a focus for the detachment. We are seeing a reduction in traffic complaints, in personal injury motor vehicle collisions, and we have had no fatal motor vehicle collisions on the 138. So that I'm very confident that our efforts continue to have a positive effect on driver behavior. But that needs to remain consistent. I know that I am also working with the Ministry of Transportation. Councillor Gelly could certainly comment that our last update from the ministry was rather disappointing. In what we thought we had some strong communication with the ministry with regards to the challenges around the 138. The ministry did not feel the same, but that doesn't change our resolve to ensuring that we have a safe highway, a safe artery, and that goes for all of our roadways. The 138 just happens to be, besides the 401, it happens to be our most traveled roadway after the 401, County Road 2 and County Road 43 being the other two. So it continues to be an area of our focus. I have employed some new techniques with MTO. We did look at all the signage going up and down the 138. I did request some new signage. I am a regular user of the 138, and when an MTO told me how many signs they actually had on the 138, I went, come on, that's not true. So I counted them on my way to and from work, and they were right. Yep, there's that many signs. The problem with signage is that they become complacent. You see them every day, you see them all the time. So the strategy that I suggested to MTO was to use the electronic signs. but use them strategically, because we've noticed on the 401 that they become complacent. People become complacent to them as well because they're seen so often. So we will be deploying the electronic signage along the 138 in strategic areas at strategic times to really get some messaging across to the motoring public and really hope to improve on that record of safety. I will speak about certainly moving into the winter and speak probably about the biggest challenge I see for the detachment moving forward is climate change. I don't think there's a single person in this room that has not been affected by it in the last 12 months. If you tell me that you have not been somewhere in the last 12 months that has not experienced a power outage due to climate change, I would say you're pretty lucky. Either you go, everywhere you go has a standby generator. Even my own home in Ottawa, I have experienced, I've been the victim of the derecho. I got my roof ripped off, lost power for 4 days. Our detachment, although it has a full standby generator, even it was not as reliable as it was supposed to be. So, and we're certainly seeing that during the winter weather, where we're seeing a decrease in overall snowpack and snow accumulation. I think what we are seeing is, or I know what we are seeing varying precipitation. And that varying precipitation is probably, or a variety of precipitation, I should say, probably between rain, snow, and freezing rain, that is making things very, very challenging. And for us as a police service, it is making things very, very challenging on how we respond. Roads are often blocked, and we have to come up with very creative ways to work with the municipalities and the United Counties to get those roadways open. A lot of phone failures, a lot of false 911 calls, a lot of infrastructure being either damaged or coming down. So very, very challenging for us to deal with. I'd also like to report back to council with regards to the mobile crisis response team. I know that I have come to see the council on 2 occasions seeking letters of support, and I've always been very grateful for that incredible support. I think everybody across the counties realizes the incredible value of that program and just the social. We can't even quantify the justice good, but the social good that that program does in the integration. I would certainly say that if you spoke to the members of my detachment, they would get rid of a lot of things before they ever got rid of the MCRT. I know today alone that they must have responded to 6 calls for service, live calls for service, where people were in crisis and they required that team to go and help them. And that didn't result in a single apprehension. Services were given directly at scenes. So again, that is, and no apprehension means no additional people in the emergency room. Last year, when I requested that letter of support, Mr. Mayor, I reported to council that we would be submitting a joint proposal to Health East for the long-term base funding of $120,000. As you and Mr. Deputy Mayor are aware, we were not successful. And the United Counties have agreed to make the funding of the MCRT a permanent budget line, which I am extremely grateful for. That does not change my resolve. Although our proposal was, in the ministry's eyes, almost perfect, they did not have any suggestions for us on how to improve it. It simply meant that there were other communities throughout that are covered by Health East that had more serious problems that required immediate funding. As you're aware, Mr. Mayor, 4 days later, the ministry came back to us and said, oh, by the way, here's $110,000 in one-time funding to split between you and Cornwall Police. The portion that I don't know if this was reported back to County Council or not, I have been with the government of Ontario for 20 years. I've seen them be fairly consistent on certain things, including retroactive billing, which is generally a big no-no. But when we went to the ministry and inquired whether that was a possibility, and they said, yes, the United Counties could go back and bill back retroactively to the hospital for the calendar year, we were very pleased because it was going to leave us with a very, very short window of about 45 days to spend $70,000 on the program. I can be very creative on how to spend money, but the hospital and I, we were really struggling. So we were very happy. So our portion of bill back, or the county's portion of bill back to the hospital was $70,000. So we are very, very hopeful that that single act of goodwill from Health East will translate this year into into that long-term funding goal. Certainly, I can report that our enhancement grant as well was a very big success. Unfortunately, the provincial government was slow in announcing that there would be a second round of grant calls for grants. When the call came, the first thing the OPP did, or when the OPP actually became aware, the OPP contacted every detachment and said, we will front the bill to continue the enhancements. Unfortunately for us, our program relies upon the hospital and their staffing rules and regulations. And they'd already given notice to the social worker that was enhancing the program that they would be returning to their position. So we weren't in a position to continue to enhance the program. I have applied for the enhancement grant, and this time we've taken the same strategy we took with our business case. So we have combined with Cornwall Police again to work as partners with the Cornwall Community Hospital. And the initial feedback I've got from the ministry was that that was the smart thing to do. They like to see us working in collaboration. I'd just like to certainly close with just a couple of things. So as you're aware, Mr. Mayor, the Police Services Board has probably reported back to County Council that the new strategic plan for the detachment will be coming out. This year, for this new 3-year strategic plan, I asked the Police Services Board to assist me in drafting its priorities from a community-based. The operations of the detachment are my decision. However, I felt that their input as the community representatives was very important to go into our strategic plan. As Constable Bray alluded to, part of the issue with the sexual assaults is we don't know that we're spoken of is we can't find a direct correlation at the moment between the increase in sexual assaults and why this increase has occurred provincially. It doesn't make sense. One of the things the board and I came up with and they brought forward was the idea that could it be an idea behind consent? And if we were speaking about consent, where should we best make our efforts? So one of the action items directly in the strategic plan is to address sexual assault in consent through our community service officer and directly in the schools. So it's actually a strategic priority in the hopes that if we get to the youth when they are younger and we discuss those things, not just from a legal perspective, but from a common sense perspective, that we can make a dent in that number. It may not occur in 1 year, it may not occur in 2 years, but we are hoping that by a 3-year trend, as they transition from probably high school into adult life, that we start to see a decrease. So I have heard back about the strategic plan. It is at the Commissioner's office for final approvals. It has made every other stage of approval, so I'm very confident. Just to give you an idea, just to give you a quick idea, Mr. Mayor, one of the other strategic priorities that is in there is the continued reconciliation, improvement of relationships with our partners in Akwesasne. We are very, very fortunate. We have very strong ties to Akwesasne. I myself worked there for 6 months on a secondment with the Akwesasne Mohawk Police. So I know the community, but we still have a tremendous amount of reconciliation and repair to do with the community. As I mentioned, I was one of the volunteers who was asked to return in my role as detachment commander during the Truth and Reconciliation events that will be happening down in Cornwall this next Saturday. Finally, Mr. Mayor, it was another very busy summer for the OPP, but another very successful summer. Probably the highlight for me every year is to be able to report back to the Police Services Board and to County Council and to all of the councils. Because when the summer is busy, especially when we talk about our community festivals, And I'm still waiting for the final numbers from the SDNG tourism, but it sounds like it's going to be a banner year for what we've attracted throughout the counties. But for me, it's the most important thing is the community engagement. I find that it is the most important time of the year for our officers to be engaging with members of the community. I encourage them to do pay duties. I encourage them to show off the cars. I encourage them to be out there at the festivals, taking pictures, shaking hands, and just talking to people. I think that we get no greater return on our investment through community policing than the confidence that we return from those activities. And I can tell you that I was extremely proud. I may have done it a little bit surreptitiously, but I attended nearly every festival or fair that occurred throughout the United Counties over the course of the weekend. Surreptitiously, I was there with my family because, you know, my kids love it. My kids love the fair rides and to eat junk food. So, but I can say that watching the members of the SDNG detachment interact with members of the public warms my heart. It really does. And because it was something that I experienced as a child, having grown up in the counties and the city of Cornwall. And I remember those positive interactions, and it's something that led me to a career in policing and where I am today. So very proud of those officers and for everything they did. Mr. Mayor, I certainly do not want to take up any more of your time or council's time, barring any questions from you or anybody else.
Well, before going to questions, I'd like to, I like the fact that you're saying about community engagement. I think over many years, you're starting to see more and more where policing is incorporating with community, like you say, participating in all that and understanding your role in our small, very small community. But we also have to recognize in the last few years, the unfortunate circumstances of fallen officers, and we have to see also the reality. So on behalf, I think, of all of council, we'd like to thank what you guys do. And I think that the people do appreciate what you guys do for our community. So again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
I will take any more questions or anything in regards to Inspector Emmer. Thank you very much. We've got an agenda that will move along, but I would, like I say, I always look forward to hearing from you. And it's just, I find it just nice to not dealing with, usually when you're dealing with law enforcement, it's always people tend to see, but more and more we're seeing this involvement with our residents. So,
well, again, thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to seeing a few of you on Saturday morning.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy, I'll get you to shut that down because I don't know if Leanne started. Okay, so moving on with, thanks, Nancy. Moving on with item 5, adoption of minutes from previous meetings.
Be it resolved that the following minutes be approved as presented. Zoning meeting 12th of September 2023, regular meeting 12th of September 2023. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any questions or comments regarding the agendas? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Adoption of minutes of committees and local boards.
That the Council of the Township of North Stormont accept the minutes from the Agricultural Committee meeting of June 7th, 2023 for information purposes. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
So these minutes are from the first meeting that we had on June 7th, and just receiving some preliminary feedback on them. We may put a little more information in the next set of minutes. It'll provide more information to council to understand what was discussed. So Mary's already on that. But our first meeting was an intro meeting. We discussed the chicken bylaw for villages and hamlets, and welcomed our new members. The second meeting, the minutes will be, I think, at the next meeting, so we can discuss it then. But if there's ever any questions, Charles and I, Councillor Shane and I would be happy, I think, to fill you in on what we get talking about at these meetings.
Thank you. And as a first, I think as we move forward, we'll just get hopefully more engagement and just get that ball rolling. So moving on to receiving our monthly staff report and recommendation. Oh, sorry. So we had taken questions. So any further questions on the committee minutes? Councillor Shane?
But just like, the only thing I'd like to add to is that for the public, if you have any issues with the agricultural side of things, please approach either Councilor McDonald, myself, or any of our committee members. We're looking for more meat to add to these meetings and make this committee worthwhile. It is a pilot, but we need more topics to discuss and more things to bring back to the public.
Thank you. All in favor of receiving the minutes? Motion's carried. Moving to receiving our monthly staff report and recommendation.
Presentation first.
Oh, you want to do, oh, that's in regards to the record management. I would maybe ask our IT specialist, Mike St. Onge, possibly could come and join Mary for any questions. Would you like to give out a presentation, or what's the format that you would like to use?
Your worship, thank you. Through you, I wouldn't mind just making a few points first and then kind of take questions after that, just to kind of set up the questions. So our county clerk, Kim Castleman, and we came last week and met with your staff and had a discussion about records management here at North Stormont. And as a result of that conversation, staff feel and we agree that they have a good knowledge of their records and documents. North Stormont already subscribing and using Tom RIMS, which is the Ontario Municipal Records Management System, and you're already using SharePoint. So at this point, we felt it's just a matter of updating your records management policy, retention schedule, maybe reorganizing some of your content and potentially moving it to SharePoint. So I just want to stress that, the whole records management piece, it's not an IT project. It's really a business project that is IT enabled. So when you look at records management, like there's a few parts to it. You want to have a classification system, you want to have a retention schedule, you want to have a policy, and you want to have a procedure for how you manage your records and dispose of them when you need to dispose of them. So just share a bit of experience at the county. We use SharePoint as the platform. So there's a couple ways you can do it. Like the Tom RIMS system was initially developed to manage paper records. And as it evolved, obviously now we can manage electronic. It works just as well for electronic records. And just because most of our documents now and records are electronic, we chose to go with an electronic records management system. And there's two kind of ways you can go about it. There are systems out there that are purpose built to be a records management system. One of the downfalls with that is that staff need to have a bit more knowledge about records management. The other way you can do it is the route we took is we took a platform, SharePoint, and out of the box, SharePoint has the functionality to be a records management system. And we hired a company that a lot of local municipalities and other municipalities in the area use to configure SharePoint to act as our records management system. But really, to me, the biggest part of the project, they have records management experts that work with our staff to go through content, to reorganize the content so it makes more sense to help the workflows, and then build that records management piece in the background. So staff are working in their files like they would normally. And really, as long as we store or put files in the proper folders where they belong, then the records management piece happens in the background. And once a year, our clerk, which is now the designated records manager of the county, runs a report, and it'll tell us what records are up for disposition. That will go to the directors for a sign off, and then the records will be disposed of, and we have a certificate of disposition. So all that to say, after that meeting we had last week, I think staff agreed, and Kim and I did as well, that the resources that were proposed for the initial consultation or assessment would, in our mind, would be better used to just kind of go down the same path we did at the county, as well as 3 other local municipalities. So really didn't feel that that assessment initial assessment. I think you guys are in good enough shape and are far enough along that you could just jump right into implementing, continue reorganizing your content and moving that piece to SharePoint. So that's a conversation we had, and they asked me to come in and present this to council, and if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them.
Before I go to questions, I'll just reintroduce. So I just said, Mr. St.
Okay.
John. So for those listening in, so Mike is the director of IT at the United Counties and also overseeing our IT here at the township. So if council has any questions to go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
Yeah, so first, thank you. We met with Mike and Kim after county council meeting, the mayor and I, and had a brief discussion there. And I really want to thank you for stepping in and helping to kind of help staff to set a path forward. I like the idea that we're kind of mimicking what you're doing and from what I understand, what other municipalities are doing as well. Because then if the more people who are doing the same thing, it also means more people we can reach out to for advice or questions if we're ever in a pinch, whatever. So to me, and I don't think this question is necessarily for you, Mike, it's more for the staff, is so what's the plan to get on board? It sounds like, generally speaking, it's going to be, let's just start using the system the way it should be used and it will start to fill itself out. But do we also need to take some focused time to actually take some stuff intentionally from here and put it there to build a critical mass, if you will, to get where we need to be? So what's generally the plan, and is there anything that you need from council to help facilitate that plan?
I think one of the things that we're going to do is look at organizing what we have first of all. And there's a lot of stuff that, I think we also need to do training. That's huge right now, because with the TomRim system, it's good, but it needs to be used. And we have a lot of people that are saving to their personal files and they're not saving municipal records in the TomRim system. So training is important right now. Whether or not we have to buy any software at this point, no. As Mike said, we are already set up with SharePoint, and it's just a matter of meeting with the different departments and finding out what their needs are. And then at that point, we'll develop a plan in conjunction with the plan that the counties have used, which Mike showed us, which we like very much. So that's kind of the next step going forward.
Mr. Mayor, so the training, is it very department oriented or is it somewhat general? And where I'm going with this, I guess, is that it feels like there's a gap has been created, whether or not we ever, maybe it's not a gap, maybe we never really had the proper training in the first place. But if we're learning as an organization, will we be able to tap into each other's expertise? Or is a department going to kind of still be a little bit on an island where if they get behind and get lost, we're going to need expertise to bring that department up to speed, bring it in from outside versus we can rely on each other?
Well, I think one of the big things is that we have to create a buy-in situation where, the departments are going to be willing and encouraged, if you like, to use the system. There was never any training. I think the issue is that, if it's something that you don't understand fully, you're just going to ignore it. And that's what's been happening, I think, because the TomRim system is very good. It's very efficient.
Yeah.
But if it's not used, it's useless.
But if to the point, if Leanne knows how to do her stuff and she's doing it regularly, she's built all the habits, and somebody from Public Works is getting behind, can she coach them? Is kind of
Yes.
the question. Okay.
Yes.
Super. Thank you.
If I may add to that. So the way the SharePoint, the libraries, document libraries are set up at North Stormont, they follow TomRim's, like the labeling and the classification of all the documents. One of the things that we really liked working with the provider we did and setting up our SharePoint, it's a little different. It mimics more the existing shared libraries that they had on the network drive and were migrated to SharePoint. And then behind the scenes, all that Tom Rims is kind of tagged as metadata to all the documents. So it's a bit more natural. You don't have to think, you know, what classification is this? It's one of my contracts, and I'll put it in this contract folder. And in the background, all the magic kind of happens. So I think that to your point is it would be getting people off of network drives, which I don't think you have many here, getting them off OneDrive. And you know, from an IT perspective, we can run reports and monitor, you know, certain staff is having a lot of activity in OneDrive, but they're never going to SharePoint, or they have, you know, 2 terabytes somewhere, but there's nothing in SharePoint. Then it's just a matter of moving them along and saying, listen, we need to move your stuff. And that's part of the process with the project we did. It was moving your content from shared files, from OneDrive, from everywhere else, and putting it in that central SharePoint location. And so I think it's just a matter of having that central repository, and once it's there, you work from there. There would be less desire to kind of try to work on your own personal systems.
Any further questions? Seeing none. So we're just accepting the report.
Well, there's no report, so we'll deal with it under unfinished business, the deferred resolution.
So, but in
But
regards,
for
there's
Michael,
no
it's just a
resolution.
presentation, there's no resolution.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Mike. And I know you've got a road to get back. So if you want to sneak out, you're more than welcome. Or if you want to stay. Yeah. Have a good night. Moving on to 7.2 bylaw 65-2023 updated report.
That the council of the township of North Stormont receives the planning report to change the zoning of 18 Front Street, Finch in the township of North Stormont, and approves the recommended changes therein. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you. So, Mr. Young, did you want to maybe just elaborate where we are before we go and just give us an updated version?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we had a public meeting at the last council meeting regarding the development on 18 Front Street, Finch, the former Brownlee Funeral Home. And there are a number of concerns brought by the public that are summarized in this report. One of the ones in particular that we had discussed with council later in the meeting is looking at that mini storage area, and if that could be replaced with residential. So we had a meeting with the applicant after council, and the following changes were made. So to remove that mini storage zoning and change it to R2 to permit semi-detached, to extend the lots on William further towards the back, so they kind of are more lined up and not kind of going around other lots, just kind of more regularly divided, and just minor adjustments to frontage along William by 1 or 2 meters, just to meet all the minimum zoning requirements. So this bylaw, generally it's similar. The R1 is along County Road 43, which is singles. R2, north of that, the existing building would be kept and converted to apartments. It's already kind of subdivided into apartments as well. And then there'd be 2 more R2 lots on the north side, and no more mini storage. We're also considering the application for severance at the county office on Thursday. And there'll be certain township conditions and requirements, including a requirement for lot grading and drainage, which was raised at the public meeting. Road widening and looking at those trees to see if they're in the private property or the right of way. And I would guess based on the narrow road, they're more than likely in the right of way where all the infrastructure is. And just some entrance requirements. There were a few public concerns whether the building should face the county road or the township road, and the condition on the policy from the county engineer is that if you have frontage on both, policies are that it faces the township road, so all the lots would be on the township road as well. And the developer has committed to looking at making sure the design of that building, the part that's facing the front street would kind of be not just a blank wall, but a nicer design as well. So we have the bylaw later in the meeting, and we're recommending council approve the bylaw as revised.
Thank you. So for members of council, just aware, so Mr. Mills is with us tonight. If there's but is there any further questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Mr. Mills, for listening to thank you for listening to the feedback and making changes. Appreciate it very much. Peter, you were saying the R2 at the north end, north of the R3, that's two R2 lots, is it? It looks like one in the picture to me, but is that going to be divided?
Yeah,
into
that would
two
be
R2?
sorry, Deputy Mayor, that would be cut into two. The existing kind of area, embalming area, I guess, the north of the funeral home, that would be demolished and there would be a lot there. And then it would kind of fit in with the garage in the back. So the lot line would be kind of going around the embalming area and then around the garage a bit. So it'd be a slightly irregular, but that's just because there's already a garage on the property there. So the R2 area on the north side, that would be two separate lots.
I'm trying to picture what you just described here in terms of how it's going to be divided.
Basically a line,
No.
Oh,
they haven't
a line
done
around
this
here.
yet, so he's
Sorry,
just a line from here to here,
so straight back.
straight back. So,
keeping this
but
garage and just.
Straight back. Okay, that's kind of how I thought you were going to do it. So two frontages on William Street, one for each. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councilor Bichetti.
Just comments, and again, I'd like to extend my thanks to Mr. Mills on that, because the public definitely did have some concerns. Specifically with the mini storage and then obviously the aesthetics of what it would look like along County Road 43. So I think those changes will make the vast majority of the public anyways a lot more receptive to the rezone.
Thank you. And if I may add, another aspect too that would have some of the public's concern is parking and having and one aspect from, I don't see it on here, but last meeting, there was a sketch with distances. I believe the depth of the R1, R2 falls in at over 35 meters, which is even greater than what a normal lot would be. With having that extra 2.5 meters would maybe be beneficial to set them back a little ways, just to possibly have where you're not having and to increase the potential of needing more parking. So I've seen it done in other municipalities where they'll send back, as our setback for front yard is 6 meters. So going to 7 or just to set them back slightly a bit more would maybe be something to consider. So that's just something to ponder on for saving some space for parking. Exactly. So yeah, the one on George. So I don't know if you to go back even that far, Peter could but I mean, I've seen some go to 7.5 meters instead of 6, and that extra 5 feet just gives you enough room to be able to have a back-to-back and still be parked in your driveway, especially if you have a couple that has 2 vehicles in one unit. Now there's always also if there's a garage attached to the house, that counts as one as well, but that's something to consider. But that's just a comment to alleviate having, like many cars where they're parking on the road and being in the width of the road being narrow might be something to consider. Good. Seeing nothing, the motion is read. We have a mover and seconder. Seeing no other questions, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving to 7.3 bylaw 68-2023 G&E Reno.
That the council of the township of North Stormont receives the planning report for a zoning amendment as submitted by the township consultant planner and approves the recommendations contained therein for the zoning of part of lots 12 and 13, concession 10, geographic township of Finch, township of North Stormont, Chrysler. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Pagelli.
So for myself, it's multiple density. I think it's all. Does council want to have just a briefing from Peter prior? Are you all comfortable? Do we just you want to add something, Peter, quickly?
The only thing I would add is, if you see on the map that's in the report, there's a slight revision to the lot layout than that was shown at the public meeting. Just some of the townhome, the semi lots became townhomes and the other way around, but just a minor increase in density, just shifting a few, that's kind of redlined. That was already circulated to the agencies and no concerns with that. Other than that, it's the same layout you've seen at your public meetings and at council before.
Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
Or just observation, because we talked at the public meeting about commercial use in the future, but I think there's still potential for some commercial uses more going out of town. Like I see there's no commercial proposed on the county road in this phase or in this draft plan, I should say, but I still have hope that we can create some more commercial space in Chrysler that's outside of the floodplain and, possibly a larger space or something like a grocery store. I know gas station's always on the list too, but just to voice that I keep seeing little parts get developed, like Provost Street where I live, there was supposed to be commercial there and then it kind of got switched to housing and we need more houses. So not opposed to that, but I do hope in the future that they'll consider, and I know it's not the county or the planning department, but that the developers will consider creating some commercial space or at least opportunity for that in the community. Because eventually you kind of run out of these prime spaces on the county road. And I think we only have a few more opportunities to do that. So those are just comments to share for the future, I think.
See no other question. Anything to add to Councillor McDonald's?
Just to add that the growth study, we received the preliminary projections and one of the needs identified in Chrysler specifically was to add additional commercial land based on the future projections and a certain amount of hectares. Now, the way this site is configured, it doesn't necessarily lend itself to commercial because it's really wide, but not that deep where the R4s are. But we'll be looking at other sites specifically. This is also all designated residential, so it's not already has a commercial designation, but we'll be looking at updating the official plan and in consultation with council and the public, identifying that spot where a larger commercial development could take place in the future.
What's the zoning on, you see where you'll have commercial down below with residential, like apartments on top? Where would that fall into our zoning?
Right now, that's general commercial, that's usually what we see along most of the main streets. In this case, it was already residential in the official plan. We, as we're updating that bylaw, we might add a few more uses to R4, just to some kind of minor uses that might fit into an R4, like a multi-res use, but this one was residential in the official plan and the zoning is residential as well.
Okay, seeing none, no other discussions or comments, any are all in favor? Motion's carried. Request for asset management coordinator.
That council approves the report and directs staff to proceed with advertising to fill a full-time one-year contract position for asset management coordinator. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Councillor Shane.
I see that we have, would Carly be to brief us? Are you on, Carly?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
We'll maybe
perfect.
get your report and then we'll go to council for question.
Okay, so this is Finance's request for an asset management coordinator. I provided in my report a bit of background and reasons for our request. We have the policy consideration being OREG 58817, which council is familiar with. I've attached the job description as well as just a glimpse on our implementation plan with the PSD citywide software. But if council would like more information on PSD, then I can definitely forward that to you. So the asset management, it supports the vision of council with expanding the residential and businesses, North Stormont's future growth, the management of our infrastructure is crucial. So having a coordinator will allow us to first implement our PSD citywide software, which is a significant undertaking. We need to merge our financial data with all of our asset description listings. Then we need to improve the data. And then we have 2023 capital project data to enter after. And while we're working towards the next regulation that's due July 1st of 2024. So we're requesting this position to be under a 1-year contract, at which time we will reassess the job duties and determine if we can integrate the ongoing maintenance of the plan with current staff, or if a full-time permanent position is required moving forward. So thank you for council's consideration, and I am available for questions.
Good. So just my question. So what are the circumstances? So I know we have timelines where July 1st, 2024 being one of them. What are the circumstances if the position is not filled and we are delayed as far as staff getting what needs to get done? How does that work with the province?
So there's funding consequences of not having our asset management meeting the regulation. What we would end up doing is probably, I listed it as an alternative. There's consultants that can help us with that deadline, which is basically we hire them just to satisfy the OREG. We did get a quote, sort of like our plan B if we're unsuccessful at filling the position. That's kind of our plan B. I'm gonna estimate that project alone to be around $30,000 for those services. But that's just meeting the July 1st deadline. That's not working with PSD and getting all of our data and getting the financial TCA schedule or tangible capital asset schedule all merged together into the one software. And that all of that work would go onto the existing staff. So it would cause a lot of time constraints and overtime.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the floor? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Denstrom.
So thank you, Carly, for your report. I think, given the deadline as that it's approaching quickly, I think it's a smart idea. What's in your estimation, the likelihood that this is going to be just a 1-year contract and not ongoing? Is it, I get the sense with something like this that it's going to become at least a part-time job ongoing, and whether or not you're able to divide that work up, I'm questioning, because we haven't been able to kind of work on it to date on a part-time basis and make the progress we need to. I just kind of want to set my own expectations when we get to the end of the year. How realistic is it this is just going to be a 1-year contract, or is it quite likely you're going to be recommending that we keep this position going?
Through the chair, this position, it can go either way. So I have some plans going forward for finance that's going to really help with our accounts payable process. It's actually part of SharePoint. So then if
We could
Oh,
still
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Now, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So I have yeah, some plans going forward for the finance department. So with our full-time accounts payable position, if we can take the accounts payable into SharePoint, and that process is faster. And just doing certain initiatives like that, then, it might be an opportunity that we can bring it back in-house, because a lot of the work right now is initial setup of PSD. So once it's set up, then we just need to maintain that data going forward.
Supplemental if I might. So thank you for that. The other thing that's been on the back of my mind is I'm not sure where some of our buildings, and I'm thinking specifically some of our rec buildings and the contents, the capital contents of those rec buildings. Sometimes I feel like they're in what's called asset management. Sometimes I feel like they're not, but I see a need. I think all of the rec groups are seeing the fact that, we really need a plan to budget reserves for maintaining those assets and understanding what we have, understanding how old they are, et cetera, is going to be the foundation for that plan. Is this in the scope of what you're recommending within this 1-year contract?
Yes, absolutely. With recreation, a lot of the facilities done in-house is with Public Works. We don't really have that key contact for asset management and making sure that all the assessments and maintenance, and then also the data collection. We have asset management students, but we don't have a position that's of a facility manager type of job description. So this would also be included in the duties of the asset management coordinator.
Okay, just so that I'm 100% clear, if we said we were in dire straits and we had to hire a consultant to meet our July 1st deadline, would that work still be in scope, or would it not be in scope? It's not required to meet regulations, or is it required in order to meet the regulations?
It is required, and that would be one of the objectives and deadlines for the asset management coordinator. But at the same time, when we'll be doing interviews and kind of looking at the education experience of applicants, potential applicants, then we would really be looking at the experience. I can offer a lot of training, but it is kind of a tight deadline. But that would be one of the key deadlines for this position, and we would of course offer support for the individual.
Yeah, that's smart. Thank you. Yeah, I support. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions? Seeing none. So in regards to asset management coordinator, all in favor? Motion is carried. Moving to 7.5, sales and disposition of land.
That council accept the report and proceed with the disposition of the property described as lot 14, Plan 246, Roxborough Gardens, in accordance with bylaw number 19-2017, a bylaw to regulate the disposition of municipal real property and assets. Moved by Councillor Bajelli, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Densham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have any sense as to, where the inquiry came from, what the expected use of the land is going to be? And the second question I'll ask at the same time, I guess, is what's kind of the net cost? I know that's a low area, and if there's going to be drainage costs, I kind of want to know before we talk about selling it, are there going to be additional costs as well that are going to come back and just absorb the money that we
Through the
receive?
chair, normally, when we declare a piece of property surplus, we sell it as is. So you're buying what you see, and any other costs, and the cost of the procedure even would be the purchaser's responsibility. So if there's if they say I want it drained or whatever the case may be, first of all, we wouldn't offer that. They would have to do that themselves. So but the cost of an appraisal, the cost of a survey plan, that sort of thing would be the responsibility of the purchaser. Blake, the request came from the neighbors. I guess there's neighbors on both sides that have sort of taken over each half of the lot. So the request actually came from the neighbors, and Blake has indicated that it is very swampy. And he said it would not be wise to build a house there. So my understanding is that the people basically would share it, would split it in half, and each would buy half, or whatever the case may be anyway, that's what they would do. So, but the problem is that once you declare it surplus, you have to, go through the procedure, and the bylaw is quite clear on the procedure.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none. So is there right now what we are, when we're saying disposition, so can we maybe move forward on finding out what the assessed value, or not the assessed, I get the market value to move forward? And if everything falls in line, is it something we could get a report from our public works to, just because I understand we can leave it on to them when we put it for sale, it's gonna have to go public.
Yes,
And
yeah, once it's
not
declared
necessarily
surplus.
two neighbors are.
No, it's up for anybody.
That's
Yeah.
right. And I'm just to avoid headaches and having issues. Is it something that a report just to know what the property entails? Or is it, if we pass it tonight, it's going on the market and that's,
Yeah, if we pass it tonight, it's going on the market, so I'll start the procedure according to the bylaw. So, so if you don't want to declare it surplus, the only problem is that, like I say, the assessed value is only $11,000. That's probably quite a bit below market value at this, even if it's a swampy piece of land, So,
as long as
but you
the,
could pull out of the procedure at any time as well. It's not necessary. You can declare it surplus. It gives me the authority to go and get an appraiser at least.
as long as the municipality is protected against where, oh, wait a minute, it's a lot that they bought from the township and it's not graded properly, and then we have to tend to
Yeah, no.
to drainage, and all of a sudden now we're getting involved into something that we might not want to. So that's my only concern is
No.
to
No, it's, the bylaw is clear. The costs of the procedure are the responsibility of the buyer.
and if there's procedures to be done, it would be at our specs.
Mhm.
So sort of
Correct.
that, if they're
Yeah.
utilizing as far as the road.
That's right.
Okay, any further, go ahead.
I just have another question. So I'm looking at all the other boxes that don't have numbers in them, just to the south, I guess, or.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
developed. Yeah.
They're not developed, but who owns them? The municipality?
No, they're probably privately owned, but I didn't look at that, to tell you
Okay.
the truth.
How come we own that one then?
Well, yeah, everybody asks that. And what happens is, in the old days, whenever this is a really old subdivision, by the way. In the old days, instead of giving money as security, they would give lots. So in all likelihood, this is what happened, and they gave a crappy lot to the municipality,
Parkland.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the sale? And motion is carried. 7.6 junior planner job description.
That council approves the report and directs staff to proceed with advertising to fill the position of junior planner as a full-time position. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
Just one comment, I think, in my opinion, anyway, the township gets really good value currently out of our relationship with the county, and I saw, I did look at the job description. It includes liaising with the county, and I think depending on, and it is hard to hire planners, and it is hard to get people that have relevant experience. So I just hope that if we do find someone, but they're not quite at the level of being able to be independent, that we could still seek planning support from the county. And I think they've been doing it pretty reasonably on like hourly basis and not overcharging us from what I see in the budget. So I just want to, I know planners are hard to find. I know sometimes they're hard to train. So I hope there's still room in the plans to keep the county involved and keep supporting us.
Yes, through the chair, absolutely. A junior planner is basically someone who is providing a service to the ratepayers, right, you know, on site. Which when Mo was here, it worked out extremely well. And he always liaised with the counties on, you know, I mean, county's approval authority on subdivisions and severances. So you know, we have no choice but to liaise with the counties. So, and that's certainly will continue.
And it is nice to have someone that people can actually meet with, like, right, you know, and I think the county is available, but it is nice to have a face or someone they can get to know. But it's the quality of advice. I want to make sure that we're still providing a high quality of information to residents, so they don't come in and kind of get what they feel like can sometimes be a runaround. And I'm saying this from personal work experience. If they sit down with someone who has no experience, it can be very frustrating sometimes to get so.
And we would provide support and training for this person as well.
That's
In
awesome.
addition to anything that's been done by.
For those of us that was here when we hired Mo, he was like, he came a long ways, and I mean, it was unfortunate when he did. So when I first got to meet Mo, it was kind of a work in progress, but I mean, and a lot of the residents said that he grew into the position. He was here all the time, and I'm sure Mr. Mill, as one of our developers, would probably state that there's value to have the junior planner to be, whether you're dealing with an application, but I mean, it always comes up with the support of the counties for the bigger concerns. And but yeah, I would definitely have, and to have somebody in the seat 5 days a week versus nothing against you're tending to, you know, everywhere and anywhere, but no, it would be a great value for the municipalities. So any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Before I know it's carried, I just have a quick questions to, and I see Carly's still on. We're trying to fill, but now we had Mo's role that he's been vacant for a little bit, but now looking at, Mo did help us in the asset management, but now looking at both jobs, is it something that will fall in with the 2024 budget? Because right now, to fill both roles, are we budget wise? Carly, can you maybe just give us an answer on that?
Sure. Through the chair, the budget for these two positions, we have, of course, the former junior planner asset manager, but we also have economic development officer budgeted for the whole year. So between those two amounts budgeted, then we'll have enough to support these two positions.
Makes sense. Thank you. So it's already carried. I just thank you very much, Carly. Moving to our bylaw. So bylaw 68-2023, an amendment. Sorry.
We haven't done the renovations.
Oh, I thought that was for the junior planner. Sorry, 7.7 renovations to the Berwick School building.
That council approved the report and authorized staff to proceed with obtaining estimates for architectural services and HVAC mechanical contractor. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Denton.
So thank you again for now that we've got the design, thank you for getting it out to us. Will there still be opportunity to speak to tweaking this? Like there's some thoughts, for example, the retractable wall in the gym. And this is open to debate. I would like to see it on the other side of the big doors rather than on this side. And so there may be other little tweaks. Will there be opportunity for us to speak into that still, or?
Yes, through the chair. actually tweaked it today again. With the gym especially, we spoke with the library, and this was a subject that Francois had broached before, that possibly we could find some space for the library. And I did have a chance to meet with the new head librarian today, and Maureen Adams, for the county clerk or county CAO. And they were thrilled with the idea that possibly we could make some room for them. And so they have a board meeting on the 26th of this week. Or not the 20, anyway, the 20 Thursday, whatever that is, the 28th. So they're going to get back to me, but they were really excited. They love the idea. I did mention to them that usually a library is in where you can get some walk-in traffic. This is not a case in this case. There's not going to be any walk-in traffic. They seem to think, because they're going to have what's called a maker lab, and they seem to think that that's not a problem in this case. So, but I mean, this is something that has to be broached with the board. They probably, this will be the first time that's probably ever going to be discussed at the board. But so yes, so that's definitely going to get tweaked. There may not even be an accordion wall in there at all anymore. There may be actually walls built if we're going to put a library in that space. We will probably build a retiring room for hearing chairs and the library portion as well. But they were quite excited.
Because I don't know if the rest of council feels this way, but if they've taken time and are comfortable with the design as is, or whether we want to give more feedback, but
excuse me, I'm sorry, but there's not a lot of architectural that's to be done in the gym anyway.
right.
So
Yeah, it's not just the gym, the whole, I'm thinking the whole design. If there's, we kind of gave our initial ideas, the conceptual has been drawn, but we really haven't had time to sit down, absorb it, even discuss it together to see if we have any ideas that we wanted to table. Again, I don't think it's going to change anything drastically, but I just want to be sure there's still a bit of flexibility there
if you feel that there's, like very strongly about how, are you talking mostly just the offices? Because that's where the important part is right now, that we have to get an architect going and an HVAC contractor going to get some drawings done up before we can go to a general contractor.
They're very generous sized offices, and there's a lot of walls that I didn't think would necessarily be in there. That's my only comment. I know we kind of wanted offices for the main directors, but it feels like there's more than just that going on, and whether or not there needs to be. I don't know if it's going to make a big deal to the cost or not, but it just feels like there's a lot of really big offices there. That's would have been my comment. And again, we're in a council meeting, so it's not necessarily a good place to have a working session. But if anybody else feels the same, then maybe we will want to have a discussion at some point. But
if I can step in, so what, like the wall that you're talking about is when you do get the architectural designer that actually goes in there now that starts looking at wiring, so you need an engineer basically that would probably oversee that kind of stuff. I agree though with Steve. So there is walls where you're seeing in the one room where you've got 4 rooms, and we're saying a lot of society now, if you look into Ottawa, and I'm sure Councillor Shane can attest to his work environment, where is an open concept. You want the directors possibly but to have 4 rooms when you're looking at maybe might be something that to close all that up that could be looked at. So I didn't really think that the rest of council, is this the first time you see this plan?
We saw a plan that was circulated by Craig by email for written feedback, because I remember providing an email back with similar types of comments about spaces and how open or closed they are.
So I mean,
But not this one.
the gist of it is there. Like I said, today, the discussions, and so I didn't know, I do have a board meeting with the library on Thursday, which I want to bring in focus. When you say walk-in, there's daycare, that's what they're gonna be banking on
This
is,
gray is the daycare section.
yeah.
And basically, we don't have any architectural, except for barrier-free entranceways and a barrier-free washroom in the daycare area. But there's very little architectural that needs doing in there. It's already set up as a daycare. So it's mostly, facelifting, painting and stuff like that, yeah.
But stating though, you're saying about not having much walk into the library. So
Well,
with the daycare, that's what they're
Yeah.
basically banking on is that at a young age where there's and then having
the
people
library.
kind of going over to the library. So that's one discussion that was had. And with respect to the council chamber in the just discussion today, I would look at maybe having a side door to council. There's already one door there, but doing something where people can park and actually, instead of walking in the front and going through the whole office, would have access to, and having the chamber possibly on this side, which is at the front of the gym, and then in behind having where we could do
Yeah.
a boardroom similar. So when we first walk in, there's a room there with roughly 6 chairs. That's kind of more somebody's coming in discussing their taxes or Mr. and Mrs. or so-and-so coming in. It's kind of small if you're having developers and their engineers coming in. So the boardroom could occupy, but we could, our council chambers could occupy, but we also could do a small maybe
Yeah.
boardroom in the gym. So that's the side where I'd like to maybe look into as far as washrooms, detailing what the architect's going to determine what we need to make sure we hit all the building code requirements for.
Okay, so what we're going to present to the architect has to be pretty well the floor plan that we want. Because they've got it. So if you're thinking that we should be eliminating walls, now is the time to say so.
I want to know what the staff would like to.
That is,
Staff has all been putting their input in, so.
Exactly.
what you see is what's the staff
Yeah.
has.
And I think that's important too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically 3 consultations. Since I've been here, we've had 3 consultations with staff. And that's the final
Yeah.
that we've come up with.
I don't personally feel like I need to have a huge amount of input on stuff like that. I think you get, like, it's the sense of we want to make sure we just don't make any big decisions we regret in terms of walls, but I also think that, I see the way the departments have done things differently, and I see that there's flavor from each department that way, and I think the CIO can look at that, and maybe the mayor and deputy mayor can look at that and make sure that that feels appropriate as an organization and as a corporation. Personally, I don't think I need to have any feedback on that now. But I like all the other ideas that you have for this space.
Yeah.
That sounds really great. But
Councillor Jelly and Councillor Shane, what?
So, yes, we did see a general floor plan like this before, and my first impression then was, like you had mentioned, back to my office in Ottawa, offices are going to a more open concept, less walls. Breaking things down by department, not so much offices. That was my first impression of this. But like I say, as Councillor McDonald has mentioned, I don't work in the office. I'm not that familiar with how each one of your departments works, so I can't really comment too much on that, but the general theme has been more open space, not more offices. Mayor Laundrie, definitely in agreement with you on the gym. When we toured South Nation, they had a real nice boardroom off to the side in their gym, which was an excellent meeting spot.
And if you look at clerk and deputy clerk has their 2 offices, which I agree with. I put in whether you want to call it the mayor's office or any members of council, but that's just something, if we have the room that we could have, that which is whether I'm sitting in the chair or somebody else, it's symbolic where they have a member of council can meet somebody and utilize that room. When you get to the second room, you're talking finance, and possibly having 4 separate rooms in finance might not be a bad thing as far as dealing with that aspect. Again, the planning department. So I think from looking it over, like I said, I'm pretty comfortable outside of dealing with, now there's a few areas where vestibules, when you come in and whether it's at the front door, but you need somewhere to hang your coat or take your boots off or so on.
Yeah,
So
that's been allowed for in the front entrance, but in the back, when we come into the council chambers, we have to allow, I think what we would do is something more modular rather than build it into the building. So that, you know, coat racks and boot racks and that sort of thing can be just movable items.
and also in discussions with our engineer, looking also on the outside as far as parking. Now you've got the daycare, and I know other daycares, they basically, it's almost like a drive-through. And we have this drive-through
Yeah.
thing that I'm just saying, they're all gonna be parking there to run in to get their kids. So we have the benefit of having the Ball Diamond land that's also beside us, that's ours. So maybe there is something that could be incorporated, but we should be looking at the big picture and also identifying.
We have to have the parking ready for the move. You know, we can't, that has to be done in conjunction with the construction on the inside.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a very, we haven't really looked at it all that much, but it's something that we have to plan for.
So the plan is we've been kind of purchased the school. We've been kind of getting ideas, but now I think it's go time. I want to see where we can retain, go an RFP for the architect, also for getting the HVAC. We've got suspended ceiling, which hopefully will help us to deal with getting
Yeah, Andre felt that the mechanical, the HVAC and the mechanical systems would be a fairly easy install because of it has to be roof units. But it's false ceiling, so he said it would just be, you know, and basically going off into the rooms, so it would be fairly simple to do.
And to do the HVAC, sorry, Deputy Mayor, to do the HVAC, then we're also, which was heated by electric with registers. They also, once we can convert, they have to be removed to be able to
That's right.
put up and finalize our wall and get the stuff painted. And so
Yeah.
it's just everything I wanted to start.
We have to get the gas installed into the building as well, because that's going to be natural gas heating from then on.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
No, I guess my final comment is, it's a lot easier to move a divider than it is to move a wall. So, and now that we could potentially have an asset manager, a junior planner, an EDO. I don't know whether we have a full complement of our finance team and everything. Do all those positions have a spot
Yes,
planned on these? Okay.
yes.
Because again, if my preference, and I'm fine, it feels like most of council is fine to leave this as is, and I'll leave it to your discretion. My personal opinion is the minimal amount of walls we need to build. Like I say, it's a lot easier to move a divider, should we ever need extra room or whatever, than it is to move a wall, but I'll leave that to the CAO to make the final call on that.
Thanks.
So any further questions? Seeing none. What are we? Sorry?
Need to carry it.
Yeah, so all in favor? Motion carried. Moving on to bylaw, so bylaw 68-2023.
Be it resolved that bylaw 68-2023 being a bylaw to change the zoning of certain lands in the township of North Stormont and amend comprehensive zoning bylaw number 08-24 from agricultural A, residential first density R1 and residential fourth density R4 zones to residential first density exception 20 holding R1 20 residential second density exception 28 holding R2 28 H, residential third density exception 2 holding R3 2 H, and residential fourth density holding R4 H zones be read a first, second, and third time passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 26th day of September 2023. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Any last questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion's carried. Moving to unfinished business, a deferred motion 280-2023.
That council rescinds resolution number 284-2023 as follows. That council defeat resolution number 284-2023 to approve the budget amendment in the amount of 20,000 in order to proceed with the assistance of information professionals to analyze our existing records and information management practices, as further information and discussion has resulted in an amended recommendation to delay this project until the new year and will be addressed through the 2024 budget process. And that resolution number 284-2023 is now defeated. And further, that Councillor McDonald and Deputy Mayor Densham agree to the amending motion. Moved by Councillor Shane and seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Deferred motion 286-2023.
That council amend resolution number 286-2023 as follows. Be it resolved that bylaw number 65-2023 being a bylaw to change the zoning of certain lands in the township of North Stormont and amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 08-2014 from general commercial CG and residential first density R1 zones to residential first density R1, residential, sorry, that should say residential second density R2 and residential third density R3 zones be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 26th day of September. And further, that Deputy Mayor Densham and Councillor McDonald agree to the amended motion.
That's the most
Move.
R1, R2, R3 I've had
Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham and seconded by Councillor Shane.
in one meeting.
Yes, so this is the zoning
This
for
would
the
be
18
for
Front
18
Street.
Front Street.
So we're,
Mr. Mills.
yeah, we're dealing with the deferred resolution first and
Oh, and
then
then
we'll
the-
do the
Okay,
bylaw.
thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Is it carried to be deferred? Is that what they're to
Well,
be?
yeah.
Moving on to 65-2023.
Be it resolved that bylaw 65-2023 being a bylaw to change the zoning of certain lands in the township of North Stormont and amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 08-2014 from the general commercial CG and residential first density R1 zones to residential first density R1, residential second density R2, and residential third density R3 zones be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 26th day of September 2023. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Councillor Bajelli.
Any further discussion, questions? All in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on, there's no new business, correspondence from 12.1 to 12:13.
Be it resolved that the correspondence as listed as items 12.1 to 12.13 on the agenda be received. Moved by Councillor Shane, seconded by Deputy Mayor Densham.
Any questions in regards to correspondence received? Go ahead, Councillor McDonald.
I'm actually just looking at the cool stuff made in SD&G for the first time, but I guess if you didn't look at that, we got to be able to think of another cool thing from North Stormont, I think. I feel like we need another cool thing, so, but I like the idea. I think like Cannelloni Brothers and Moose Creek Precast are pretty good.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty cool to have one of our counselors on the countryside thing was it last year's?
The
Promotion was
TV,
that.
yeah, Matt and I were on that, and I'm sure Tara will run our videos again on something else, but anyways, I like the idea. The county's always working on cool things like that.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Moving on, our next scheduled meeting will be October the 10th, 2023, followed by October 24th, 2023. Coming events, I believe, was addressed in our opening remarks. No closed session, so we're moving on to ratification by law.
Be it resolved that bylaw number 69-2023 being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify council's actions at its regular meeting of September 26, 2023, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 26th day of September 2023. Moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
Before I asked to ratify, I read the note, the end after the fact. So back to scheduled meeting. So just to let you know, so the municipality will be jumping into a strategic plan, which will take place on October 18th at 9 a.m. We will be, we've hired Mr. Lockhart, Eric Lockhart, to facilitate the day. I will be in discussion with him, hopefully between now and the end of the week, to basically see on putting a message out there where we want the input of our residents. If they can reach out, it will be put on online, basically questions that could be answered just to help the public give us direction as how our day's gonna go. So hopefully between now and Friday, Mary, maybe we can reach out or see if you.
I
can get
have
it.
reached out to Eric today and he would like to speak with us at 9:30 on Thursday.
Thursday morning, perfect. So there will be more to come, but I would love input from our residents and give us for council's next 3 years of this member of council to give us direction on our strat plan. And that will be all. So we do have a mover and seconder on ratification. All in favor? Motion's carried. And our adjournment at 8:15.
Be it resolved that this regular meeting adjourn at 8:15 PM, moved by Deputy Mayor Densham, seconded by Councillor Shane.
All, we don't need all in favor. Or any questions? No, all in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good the rest of your evening. Thank you.